This is chapter 1D on HCF and LCM. In this chapter, we will find the highest common factor and use it to reduce fractions. Then we will proceed to find the lowest common multiple and use that to add fractions. So, finding the highest common factor. Now, there is definitely many ways to do this. So, for example, with 24 and 36, some of us will just look at it and automatically know what is the highest common factor, and some of us will just say, oh, it's right away, it's 12. Some of us will be able to write out all the factors and just circle the one that's the largest one. What I'm going to show you now is a technique that's going to be good for problems such as B, when the numbers are just ridiculously huge. So, I will take my 24 and I will break it apart into its prime factors, just like we practiced in the previous chapter, prime factor decomposition. Okay, so 24 is composed of 3 times 2 times 2 times 2. Let's do 36. So 36 is composed of 3 times 2 times 2 times 3. Now, to find the highest common factor, what we do is circle all the common factors. So they each have a 3, they each have a 2, they each have another 2, and well, that's it. So they have a 3, a 2, and a 2 in common. So 3 times 2 times 2, well, that makes 12. So the highest common factor of 24 and 36 is 12. So, can you use the same technique to solve B? Pause. Okay, so let's go ahead and use that same technique that we talked about. Let's break apart 240. So when we break apart 240, we have 2 times 2 times 3 times 2 times 5 times 2. Let's break apart 540. So that breaks apart into 3, 3, 3, 2, 5, and 2. Now let's circle all the ones they have in common. They each have 1, 3. They each have 1, 2. They each have 1, 5. They each have another 2. And that looks like that's all that's in common. So 3 times 2 times 5 times 2, which makes 60. So the highest common factor between 240 and 540 is 60. So now we're going to go ahead and use this highest common factor to reduce fractions. So we need to basically look at these two, the numbers, the numerator, which is on top, and the denominator, which is on the bottom, and reduce it. So if I were to do the first one as an example, I want to reduce, you can reduce it by 2, dividing by 2 constantly, but that's going to take forever. So why not use the highest common factor just to get it done faster? So when you work it out, you know that 36 and 60, they have a highest common factor of 12. So to simplify this fraction, we'll simply divide the top by 12 and the bottom by 12, which makes 36 divided by 12 makes 3 on top, 60 divided by 12 makes 5 on the bottom. And there you go. Simply by using the highest common factor, we simplified our fraction in one shot. So at this time, pause the video and do B. So in this one, you might have to work it out a bit. So let's find all their factors again. So if we break apart 96 and 168, this is all their prime factors. So let's circle the things they have in common. We know that they have a 3 in common, they have a 2 in common, and they have another 2 in common, and another 2 in common. So meaning their highest common factor is going to be 24. So we have to reduce this fraction by 24 on top and 24 on the bottom. So if we divide 96 by 24, that should give us a 4 on top, then 168 divided by 24 will be 7. So 96 168 simplifies down into 47 simply by using the highest common factor. Now let's work on finding the lowest common multiple. So finding the lowest common multiple is simply a matter of doing what we did earlier, finding the highest common factor and multiplying it by the remaining numbers that were left over. So let me explain what I mean. So when we broke apart 24 and 36, so let me do that again. We basically had these sets of prime numbers. We learned that they both had a 3 in common, a 2 in common, and another 2 in common, meaning their highest common factor here was a 12. Now you see how this 3 doesn't get used and this 2 that is circled in yellow does not get used? So to find the lowest common multiple, which basically means the number in which you multiply by numbers that they have in common. So for example, if we had the numbers 3 and 4 and we skip count 3, 6, 9, 12, and 4 we did the same thing, 4, 8, 12, 16, We'll notice that the lowest common multiple they have is a 12. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the 24 and the 36. So what we have to do now, as you see the 3 and the 2, take the highest common factor, 12, and take the two numbers that I circled in yellow and multiply it to the highest common factor. So that's basically 12 times 6, which makes 72. That right there is the lowest common multiple of 24 and 36. And to prove it, you can write out a long sequence of 24, 48, and so forth. In the end, the number in which they have in common in that long sequence will be 72. So at this time, pause and do the same thing with B. Okay, so we knew that the highest common factor of 240 and 540 was 60 to start. So what's left over? They have 2 and a 2 and a 3 and a 3 left over. So let's work out their lowest common multiple. First, take the 60 that they have in common, and let's multiply what's left over. 2 times 2 and 3 times 3. 60 times 4 times 9 ends up being 2,160. And there you go. That's how you find the lowest common multiple. Now, of course, we have to use this to now solve problems where we add fractions. So in the basics of adding fractions is you have to have a common denominator, right? So using the knowledge of finding a lowest common multiple, can you write equivalent fractions of what's written on the screen so that you can add them? If you know what to do, pause. If you're not sure what to do, continue watching. So in this case, I have 3/15 and 2/9. I cannot add these fractions because the 15 and the 9 are not the same. So first, let's find out their prime factors. 3 and 5, 3 and 3. They each have a 3 in common, so that's their highest common factor. Now I'm going to go ahead and figure out what is their lowest common multiple by multiplying what's left over times 5 times 3. So 3 times 5 times 3, this makes 45. Therefore, I know that my denominator has to be 45. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here, and I'm going to make 3/15 turn into something with a 45 on the bottom, which means I have to multiply by 3, 9/45. Then the 2/9, I need to turn this into something with a 45 on the bottom, which means I multiply this whole thing by 5. So 2 times 5 makes 10. So now that these two fractions have a common denominator, now I can add them. So 9/45 plus 10/45, this makes 19/45. So now can you try B? All right, so let's break this apart. 28 and 40. First of all, let's find their lowest common multiple. So here's the prime factors. They have 2 2's in common, meaning their highest common factor is 4, but to find the lowest common multiple, take the 4 and multiply it by all that's left over, the 7, the 5, the 2. And that makes 280. So the lowest common multiple, which means the fraction I want on the bottom, will be 280. So let's do this. I want 23/28 to have 280 on the bottom, meaning I have to multiply everything by 10. So this will give me 230 over 280. Then 17/40, I need 280 on the bottom, which means I have to multiply everything by 7, which means this should be 119. So now I can add them together. 230 over 280 plus 119 over 280, which gives me 349 out of 280, which means we need to reduce this, right? So if you reduce it into a mixed fraction, this will be 1/69 out of 280. And the beauty about working with the lowest common multiple to get our final answer is that once we reduce our answer down from an improper fraction, there's really no more need to reduce because we already took the shortest route possible to get our answer. If you chose to go the longer route and work with a larger number and not the lowest common multiple, then yes, you would have to spend time reducing your fraction. And that's it.